Yo, Benny! I don't think he's home, man. Benny, man, yo. Yo, what's up, everybody? I'm MC Savant from the Kankasaurs. You can catch me on funnyordie.com/Kankasaurs, K-A-N-K-S-O-R-Z, you know what I'm saying? But right now, it's all about Benny TV. Yo, because my boy Benny the Gagoots got his own show. And I just want to give a big shout out to Benny. And in honor of that, I'm going to do dope-ass freestyle, man. So he's got to figure out what rhymes with Benny. 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 What rhymes with Benny? Benny. What rhymes with Benny? Benny. He's in the Serengeti. He's hunting for a Yeti and he's always on the ready. And Benny's always merry when he's eating his spaghetti. But right now he's in the desert, so his palms are kind of sweaty. His good friend Freddy, he brought him that Ben and Jerry. And Yetis, they love the Ben and Jerry. So Benny caught that Yeti and we all threw confetti. Yeah, Benny. Benny TV, baby.
Yeah, Benny TV, baby. Thank you, DJ Survive, for that great introduction. And what a show we have for you tonight on Benny TV. We get a glimpse of what really happened behind the scenes of an award-winning Star Trek episode. Alfred Hitchcock's first American project wins the Academy Award for Best Picture. Charles Lawton plays God. Vincent Price is the last man on Earth. And a young, handsome man never ages while his portrait becomes grossly decrepit. Was that last sentence redundant? Well, stay tuned to find out. And also, we will find out if Willy Wonka has anything to do with what I just spoke about tonight. So as I mentioned, we have a great show, a lot of classic movies, classic television episodes, and we're going to start with Mr. Harlan Ellison. Here we go, Harlan.
So I write this Star Trek episode, which I am told by only the wisest heads, is the all-time best Star Trek segment ever written. It's called City on the Edge of Forever. And it was mucked about by a lot of people, including Roddenberry, and they put a much inferior version of it on the air. This is a scene in which Kirk and Spock, these two guys walk into the time portal, they come out on the other side, and they see a lot of rocks. And the rocks have runes on them, R-U-N-E-S. Unfortunately, the person who did the set design didn't know what the word runes meant, and he thought it meant ruins. So instead of having large obelisk Stonehenge-like stones, pilasters, if you will, with runes on them, archaic glyphs, they had old broken stones. And you're supposed to be able to see the city up on the crest. That was the city on the edge of forever, la-di-da. And this is the way I described it in my script. There's a panning shot like this from Kirk's immediate right around the bowl of the plateau. The gray sky, you can see the gray sky past the rock prominences, light and an eerie mist that gives the entire area an ethereal look. There are niches in the rock walls, boulders of the same bright substance here and there on a higher peak, but still quite far off, the city, this magnificent city, glittering like a hashish eater's dream. And as the camera pans around, we see, for the first time, the Guardians of Forever. The shot continues a beat, and then the camera zooms in on them, who, for just that beat, they had looked almost like part of the stone walls. Then they come away and you see they are men as the camera closes on them. And Kirk says with wonder, "Who are you?" And the first Guardian answers with a voice of power, incalculable power, "We are the Guardians of Forever." And Kirk says, "You live in that city?" And the Guardian says, "Since before your sun burned hot in space, before your race was born." And Spock says, "This place is dead, empty. Why do you stay?" And the first Guardian says, "Only on this world do the million pulse flows of time and space merge. Only here do the flux lines of forever meet. Only here can exist the gateway to the past, where the time vortex of the ancients can work. only here. And Spock, very scientific, says, "Can you give us a demonstration? Is that possible?" And the Guardian's answer is oddly tinged with weariness and yet pleasure. And he says, "Time is weary for the craftsman who cannot demonstrate." Just shoot the fucking thing so I can go back to my life.
You have somebody who is one of the greatest writers of the 20th century.
"Repent, Harlequin," said the TikTok man. "You give me what I asked for because I'm God."
Mail Dead Gopher to publishing house.
Absolutely true. Harlan Ellison should probably be read in schools.
The trick is not becoming a writer. The trick is staying a writer. And Kirk says with wonder, "Who are you?" "We are the Guardians of Forever." These are my extra typewriters.
This is like an ammunition dump.
Where does he get the energy? You stupid! You morons!
I think revenge is a very terrific good thing for everybody.
Attacked ABC executive breaking pelvis.
True.
Get it on. Really do it.
He threw me out of the house naked once.
Ladies like the little Hebrew boy.
That was a mean little dog. I just wouldn't go down. Yeah, it's a horn, you douchebag! That's one reason people are stupid. They just are not using their brains. You don't use a muscle, it atrophies.
Stop cringing, I won't hit you.
The only smog there is down in the valley killing Republicans. I don't give a shit about that. Art is supposed to be hard. Art is supposed to be demanding. That's the way I feel about it. Yes, of course. He treated women decently, but he was an idiot. I should do a freebie for Warner Brothers? What is Warner Brothers out, with an eye patch and a tin cup on the street? Fuck no. Now it begins.
And welcome back. And Ryan's here to give us a weekly movie review.
Yes, I am here for the weekly movie review. I saw one movie this week, surprisingly. There wasn't a lot to see this week. There was Upgrade, which I heard was pretty good, from Blumhouse. I didn't get a chance to see that. There was Adrift. It was a romantic film based on a true story about two people that were in love. They're on a boat, and then they end up adrift. But what I did see, which we have the poster for, is Action Point, starring Johnny Knoxville and Chris Pontius, and literally no one else that you've ever heard of. One guy, the villain's like a character actor, but you wouldn't know his name. And I'm a very big fan of Johnny Knoxville. This is like a spiritual sequel of the Jackass franchise, which this is all 4 Jackass films plus Bad Grandpa 2.5, because all the Jackass films have a 0.5, which is just all the added stuff that didn't make the movie. They put into a different movie.
Oh,
so there's
okay.
3 Jackass movies, but there's really more than 3, because they there's 2.5 and there's 3.5, and the Bad Grandpa had a 0.5. So you have all of those. Action Point is not on the same level as the Jackass films. It's the first one to be an actual story and not be a found footage type movie, or the Jackass movies are just stunts. Bad Grandpa does have a little bit of a story, but it's all done like a mockumentary found footage style.
Right.
This is a regular film starring Johnny Knoxville, which he's been in other movies. He was in Walking Tall. He was in The Ringer. He was in Skip Trace with Jackie Chan. He was in the Dukes of Hazzard movie.
Hazzard, yeah.
He's been in a lot of films, Johnny Knoxville. He's gotten around as an actor. But this is a film that was based around stunts based on a real place, which was Action Park in New Jersey, which I know some people that have been to. I know Tim Thompson, Long Island comedian, has. I just spoke to him last week when he was here. We were talking about the real Action Park and how he used to go there when he was a kid. And it was very dangerous, but he's like, I never saw anybody die, so it seemed all right to me. I never went to Action Park because it was gone before I was born. But it seems like it's a park that almost had no rules, that was based on how unsafe it was. It had ridiculous loop-de-loop slides and an alpine slide, which you go on like a little cart, and it's made of concrete. And you go down as fast as you can, you get hurt. And the movie's built around these set pieces, and it's just really bad.
Yeah.
It's just really bad. And this is somebody that really loves the Jackass franchise, and I love Johnny Knoxville, and I love Chris Pontius, and I love Wild Boys, which is an offshoot of Jackass, which was Chris Pontius and Steve-O, and they just went into the jungle, and it's like making fun of nature shows, but it's with the two of them doing nature stuff in Africa.
And that was a
places.
movie?
That was a show.
Oh, that was a show.
On MTV.
Okay.
And I love Chris Pontius. And Chris Pontius really only does Jackass stuff. He's not like Johnny Knoxville. Chris Pontius is a member of the Jackass crew who's in this movie. He's the only member in the movie other than him. And I love Chris Pontius. But in this, he's just... I kept saying to my friend that I saw it with that I don't think Chris Pontius knew he was in a movie. I don't think he even knew he was on set. Just all the stuff he does is just stuff that Chris Pontius does in real life. He just walks around with a hatchet, and he's a lifeguard, and he doesn't look at the people because he's like, oh, let God sort him out, even though he's a lifeguard, which is the funniest joke in the movie. The only times I chuckled were at physical comedy and physical gags, which is where they shine, but it didn't really do it. It didn't have the same feel as the Jackass movies. And this supposedly was a film where Johnny Knoxville got more injured on this movie than any Jackass movie. And I thought it would be cool to incorporate an actual film and an actual story with the things that everyone loves about Jackass. It just didn't mesh. And I'll end the discussion of the review with this tidbit. The film was based around a park that takes place in New Jersey. The film takes place in California. The film was shot in South Africa. So just a good example. It was shot in South Africa. It's supposed to take place in California. You can tell watching it that it is not California. California doesn't look like that. I mean, maybe some areas of California. But, yeah, so Action Point's a bad movie.
How did it do in the box office?
It made $2 million on a $19 million budget in 2,000 screens. So really bad.
Yeah,
really,
that's
really
very bad. Very
$2
weak.
million, one of the worst opening weekends of all time for a big release, which is a shame because I love Johnny Knoxville, but it was really bad. I'll give it a 2 out of 10, so the $2 million is fitting.
Yeah, and I like Johnny Knoxville as well.
You like The Ringer.
I like The Ringer. I liked Dukes of Hazzards. I liked him in Walking Tall. He was one of the best parts of Walking Tall.
Yeah, with him and The Rock.
Of a reboot of Walking Tall. He was very good. I'm not a fan of the Jackass stuff because
I know you're not.
I know they're pranks that people like you find funny, and when I say your generation finds.
The thing that I like about Jackass, and it's different from YouTube prank shows and stuff like that, they only prank themselves and cause themselves physical harm. If they're pranking other people, it's just really weird stuff. Like there's a hole somewhere in California, and they have Chris Pontius shoot out of it dressed like the devil.
Oh, okay.
And he hurts himself, and he scares all the people, and he has a sign that says, "Keep God out of California," and he's protesting. And that was just a shock gag to mess with people. That wasn't causing anyone actual harm. Some of these people do pranks where they're actually hurting people.
Yeah,
they hurt people. They only hurt each other. They would never do anything they'll do that. They'll do another thing where the biggest character is Preston. He's 300 pounds, and then they have Wee Man, who's the little guy. And they chase each other down the street. They go all the way down the street, and then they come back, and Preston's running away from Wee Man because Wee Man has 100 dwarves with him. And they're all running down the street. They just freak everyone out wherever they were. They just love to do that stuff to people, to mess with people. Just mess with people, and that's all in good fun. And they'll prank each other with stuff they know, like Bam Margera's afraid of snakes, so they'll lock him in a room with snakes, and they'll cause so much pain and harm to each other, but not innocent bystanders, which is one thing that I always liked about it.
Okay, yeah.
Because they keep it within the group. They do terrible things to each other, but it's to each other.
It's to each other.
It's
They're
to
that
each other.
type of group.
They'll do it to the crew too, but you're part of the family. It's the group. They don't do it outside. They wouldn't do that. Like, and everyone thinks like, oh, you're Jackass crew. All you guys do is prank each other. And it's like, no. And like, it got to the point that in interviews for the third one, they said we don't like doing this anymore because we know when it's happening, we know all we're going to be doing is hurting each other.
Oh, so they try. Johnny Knoxville tried to. He is a good actor.
I like Johnny Knoxville. I think he's fun. You know, his career hasn't been huge, but he has had a career.
Yeah.
For the past 20 years, which is pretty amazing.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
And you know, you can see it now. It's aging. He's 47 now, so it's not the same as it was 20 years ago. And you could tell that like he's still in it, but like I wish that he was doing more. It made like every Adam Sandler movie look much better by comparison.
Oh, wow.
Like every Netflix Adam Sandler movie.
Oh,
looked better
wow.
by
Yeah,
comparison.
Netflix Adam Sandler movies.
Specifically Netflix Adam
Yeah,
Sandler.
because they're not that. I'm sorry, Adam. I think you're a funny guy, but you got to do something.
I love Adam Sandler. I'm
Yeah.
a huge Adam Sandler fan. His movies aren't what they used to be. They haven't been. I thought the Meyerowitz Stories, which is a Noah Baumbach film starring him, Dustin Hoffman, and Ben Stiller, was a brilliant film.
I
It was
love that movie.
An amazing film.
That was a director.
Which came out last year. It was not direct. It was Netflix bought the rights to it, but it wasn't part of his deal.
Okay.
With like the Do-Over and Ridiculous Six and the Week Of and stuff like that. It wasn't part of that deal, but Netflix bought it at Sundance. And it's a great movie. I think more people should watch. That is on Netflix as well. That is like, out of everything that he's made that they put on Netflix, that's the one. That's an excellent movie. And all the other ones aren't very good.
That's a great
but,
movie. I do.
Maybe Johnny Knoxville will get that movie someday. I don't know if he will. Now, that's the end of the review. I have some movie news.
Okay, cool.
We'll go on some movie news. There's been some news about Willy Wonka today that came about. This is both Willy Wonkas, as we know now. That's Gene Wilder on the left and Johnny Depp on the right. And we have another photo with news that there's going to be a new Willy Wonka. They want to make a Willy Wonka origin story starring either Donald Glover on the left, Ezra Miller in the middle, or Ryan Gosling on the right. One of the three is on the short list to be Willy Wonka in a Willy Wonka origin film, because everything's got to have an origin movie now.
Now, is there an origin? I never read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Did you?
And here's another photo, Ryan Gosling with Gene Wilder and Donald Glover. I did as a kid when I was probably like second grade, third grade. I read it and I liked it, and it has a mixture of both of the Tim Burton film and the original, but the original is much better. But they don't really have like an origin. They tried to make an origin in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the Tim Burton one.
Yeah, I remember
where
that.
Christopher Lee is his father, and he never let him have sweets because he was a dentist, and that's why he loved chocolate, and that's why Willy Wonka was the chocolate man, was because his dad didn't let him have any sweets. So if that's the movie, I don't want to see that at all. It sounds terrible. I'm not really sure how good of an idea it really is to do a Willy Wonka movie.
I don't know, but now, what's his name, Glover?
Donald Glover.
Donald Glover.
No relation to Danny Glover.
No relation. Donald Glover, I think, would make a great Willy Wonka.
As I
think
said
it would
last
be
week,
good.
he's the best part of Solo to me. He plays young Lando Calrissian.
He's a great actor, and I would like to see that. I would like to see Willy Wonka, an African-American playing Willy Wonka. And because the song, years ago, the song of the original movie was sung by Sammy Davis Jr., the Candyman. Mm-hmm.
So he could do something like that. He's somebody that could do a mixture of like something dark but comedic and family oriented, because that's kind of where he lies. Especially like his last music video, This Is America, has a lot of that. It's fun, but it's very dark, and it has a lot of overtones, and it has a lot of themes that goes with a lot of things, which is what Willy Wonka I always thought of is, because he's the candy man, but he's the candy man.
Right.
You know, he's good, but he's evil. And in the Tim Burton one, he just came off creepy and strange. He didn't really come off.
The Oompa Loompas were weird, because then you're going to have to give the origin of how the Oompa Loompas got there, too.
Yeah, they did that in the Tim Burton one too, and that was just weird. And like, they did a lot of this stuff in that movie. They did a lot of the origin, and like, they answered all the questions you didn't have. You know, just my biggest issue with Solo is that movie is literally there to answer the questions nobody was asking.
Right.
And I think that this might do the same thing. I don't know. The one thing I like is Ryan Gosling did La La Land. He's very musically talented. Donald Glover is musically talented. I believe Ezra Miller has some sort of musical background. He was Flash in Justice League. He was also in Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Yeah, he was very good in that.
Yeah, which is a very well-liked movie with Emma Watson.
Yes, I love that movie. He's great.
Yeah, he's one of the main characters of that. And he's a very good actor. He's also in the Fantastic Beasts movie. This movie's supposed to be produced by those people, so maybe he has a leg up. I think Ezra Miller would be the safe choice. I think Ryan Gosling would be really good, but Ryan Gosling is, to me, one of the best actors that still hasn't gotten that movie that's taken him over the top. Like La La Land did, and it was a huge hit.
Yeah.
But like Blade Runner should have been that movie, but Blade Runner wasn't as big as everyone thought it would be. And Nice Guys, I love. I think Nice Guys is one of the best, probably the best buddy cop movie this decade. And didn't get the recognition that it deserved. So Ryan Gosling needs that. I don't think the Willy Wonka movie would be that.
But one thing I disagree a little bit with Blade Runner 2049. I think that movie has legs. And I think that movie's going to be around a long time.
Because it's on HBO now. It has legs.
It's on HBO. No, but even when it came to DVD, didn't you tell me that it was
a huge seller?
It was a huge seller. People are interested.
Well, if you got a home theater and you have, a big home theater and you want to show it off to your friends, that's the movie to put on.
But you don't want to sit. A lot of people, I understand, don't want to sit 3 hours to see a movie.
Yeah.
So with a DVD, you could just click pause, take a little break, go back to it. I understand. I wouldn't do that. I would have to watch the movie in its entirety, which I've done 2 times since it's been on HBO. But
it's been on HBO for like 3 days, for like a week.
Yes.
It's been on HBO for a week. You watched it twice this week?
Well, yeah, kind of. Watched it Saturday and then Sunday.
I did watch something else this week. Okay. And this is only something that you would find funny. I watched the original Ocean's 11, starring Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack, because as only Benny Rizzuti would know, in our family, I have an aunt that constantly says that the original Ocean's 11 is a masterpiece and the other 3 are drivel and there'll never be anything as good as that. And I watched because coming out this week, one of the 2 movies I'll probably be reviewing next week will be Hotel Artemis, which I know you want to see, and Ocean's 8 comes out, which is the new Ocean spinoff with Sandra Bullock and Cate Blanchett, Helena Bonham Carter, which I'm looking forward to. Might be good, might be bad, I don't know. I like the Ocean's movies. I like heist films. I like con movies. So I'm hoping that it'll be a lot of fun.
You're a big fan
so I decided to watch the Frank Sinatra Ocean's 11 movie. It doesn't hold up. I don't want to say it's terrible, but it doesn't hold. I'm sure it was great at the time that it was released, but now that does not hold up. It's mostly just people sitting in rooms getting an operator so they can talk more. And the best part of the movie is probably Cesar Romero with that mustache, that famous mustache, that he wouldn't shave even to be the Joker in Batman.
In the Batman television series.
Television show.
But yeah, I know. I understand that. It was back then too when those movies came out, Sinatra movies and stuff. It was their charisma that got you to go see the.
You're just watching the Rat Pack. Other than that, there's nothing about the characters. They're just there. Like, yeah, in the new ones, it's George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, but they all have characters.
Yes.
Matt Damon is this insecure guy because his parents are famous con men that know these guys who kind of vouch for him, so he's trying to impress them, but he doesn't really know, and everybody else kind of knows each other, and, Bernie Mac is great.
Yeah.
As the con man, he's there's some great stuff. Each character has its own quirk and his own stuff about him, and they're not just stereotypes. They're not just stereotypical characters. The worst character is probably Don Cheadle because he just has a really, really terrible British accent.
Yeah.
And then some people say it's good. It depends, but it's a pretty bad British accent. But other than that, I love those movies. Some people don't like the sequels as much. I love the sequels. I think Ocean's 13 is probably better than the other 2. It's right up there with Ocean's 11 for me.
And now the new one is called Ocean's 8?
Ocean's 8. And it's supposedly Sandra Bullock is Danny Ocean's sister. But I don't know if anyone's making a cameo from the other ones.
Now, that was my question: is it produced by the same people?
Mm-hmm.
It is. So
Yeah, it's going to be the
same
same universe. It's the same world. It's
Right.
just a new cast of characters.
All right, but it's still the same crew, same director? Or?
No, not the same director. This is that was Steven Soderbergh. This is Gary Ross, I believe, who did the first Hunger Games.
All right.
And the remake of The Gambler, which wasn't very good with Mark Wahlberg. But so we'll see. That comes out this week. Hotel Artemis also comes out, which we'll probably
I want to
talk
see.
about extensively next week.
And I'll be showing clips of movies that are similar, but some older. I'll be
Okay.
showing clips like I would consider Arsenic and Old Lace, that
Yeah.
type of, because I like those movies where they're all in a house and everybody's a little weird. They've been making movies like that for years, but now in the 21st century, we're a little more graphic. We're a little more violent. But it looks like, to me, it's reminiscent of those type of films.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
Where everybody meets it. There was James Whale, who directed the Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. Directed a movie called The Old Dark House. And it was a rainy night, and all these people who were character actors at the time, Boris Karloff is in it, Charles Lawton, they all show up in this house because the roads are blocked from the rain. And there's there's some characters that might be murderers, some some are just fun-loving, roaring 20s type. And so this reminds me of that type of movie. That's my interest for that.
So we'll see. We'll see
They're
how.
quirky.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and as I mentioned last week, Batista is in it.
Yeah, Dave Bautista. I love Batista.
I love Dave
Jodie
Bautista,
Foster's
too.
in it.
Jodie
Sterling K.
Foster.
Brown. Both movies have a big ensemble cast. Both Ocean's 8 and Hotel Artemis. There's one other movie I believe coming out. I'm not sure. Also, reviews started coming out for Jurassic World, which doesn't come out till the end of the month, and they're mixed.
Yeah, they're mixed.
So we'll see how that goes at the end of the month.
Yeah,
But, that's a couple weeks away.
That's the type of movie people are going to go. Anyway.
Well,
Yeah.
even if it gets terrible reviews, I'm going to see it. It's a Jurassic Park movie. I love Jurassic Park. I'm going to go see it. So we'll see how that goes as well. But I know you have some more show to get to. So
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Of
That was a
course.
great review. This is Ryan Rizzuti. I'm Benny Rizzuti. This is Benny TV. And now I like to show a movie with pretty much of an ensemble cast at the time. And it was Alfred Hitchcock film, his first American project. It done in 1940, and it was the only Alfred Hitchcock film to win Best Picture. And very mysterious movie, Rebecca. And here we go.
Last night, I dreamt I went to Mandalay again. It seemed to me I stood by the iron gate leading to the drive, and for a while I could not enter, for the way was barred to me. Then, like all dreamers, I was possessed of a sudden with supernatural powers and passed like a spirit through the barrier before me. The drive wound away in front of me, twisting and turning as it had always done. But as I advanced, I was aware that a change had come upon it. Nature had come into her own again, and little by little had encroached upon the drive with long, tenacious fingers. On and on wound the poor thread that had once been our drive. And finally, there was Mandalay. Mandalay, secretive and silent. Time could not mar the perfect symmetry of those walls. Moonlight can play odd tricks upon the fancy, and suddenly it seemed to me that light came from the windows. And then a cloud came upon the moon and hovered an instant like a dark hand before a face. The illusion went with it. I looked upon a desolate shell with no whisper of the past about its staring walls. We can never go back to Mandalay again, that much is certain. But sometimes, in my dreams, I do go back to the strange days of my life, which began for me in the south of France.
I suppose she was the most beautiful creature I ever saw.
No, stop!
This isn't at all your idea of proposal, is it?
You see, she's bound to be insanely jealous at first. She must resent you bitterly. Why should she? Don't you know? I should have thought Maxine would have told you. She simply adored Rebecca.
You certainly have your work cut out as Mistress of Manderley. To be perfectly frank with you, my dear, I can't see you doing it. You haven't the experience. You haven't the faintest idea of what it means to be a great lady.
Our marriage is a success, isn't it? A great success. We're happy, aren't we? Terribly happy. You mustn't worry about old Max and his ways. One never knows what goes on in that quiet mind of his. Often he gets into a terrible rage, and when he does... But I don't suppose he'll lose his temper with you. You seem such a placid little thing.
And that was Rebecca, one of my all-time favorite films. I'm a big Alfred Hitchcock fan. Alfred Hitchcock is known as the master of suspense. And a lot of people associate him with just horror. But no, not all of his films were horror. He actually could build suspense. He could actually make comedy. He could add comedy with his suspense. Like this picture right now is him, looks like he's going to be burned at the stake, and he's smoking a cigarette. So Alfred Hitchcock was a great director before he came to the United States. And then he did a film for David O. Selznick, which was Rebecca. And we have a picture of a famous quote of Alfred Hitchcock. And it says, if it's a good movie, the sound could go off and the audience would still have a perfectly clear idea of what was going on. And that was the way Alfred Hitchcock thought. Alfred Hitchcock went by his source material. He said everything had to be on paper. Actually, he said it this way. Let me see if I could do my Alfred Hitchcock impression. I usually do great impressions when no one's around. When I first come to, everything has to be on paper. That's the way to on paper. When I did Rebecca, I had to get the book. And the book, Rebecca was based on a classic novel, a masterpiece of a bestseller by the author was Daphne du Maurier. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. Daphne du Maurier, who was a prolific writer, wrote a lot of great books, and this one was beloved by audiences. And we'll show the poster of that. And when we show the poster, I'd like to tell you a little bit of Daphne du Maurier. I looked her up. And although she is classified as a romantic novelist, her stories seldom feature a conventional happy ending and have been described as moody and resonant with overtones of the paranormal. Here we have the poster of Rebecca. We're going to put that up right now. And these best-selling works of her were not... These best-selling works were not at first taken seriously by critics, but since have earned an endearing reputation for storytelling craft. And you can see on the poster, there's actually a page from Rebecca in the poster, and there is Sir Laurence Olivier, Joan Fontaine, who is sister to Olivia de Havilland, and Joan Fontaine, and they meet, and the picture of the woman on the left of that is Rebecca de Winter, and it's Rebecca passes away, and Maximilian de Winter went away, and you don't know why he left his home. He's having problems dealing with it. He meets Joan Fontaine, who was an innocent, not one of these debutantes that Maximilian was used to dating, and he marries her and goes back to his estate, which is known as Manderley. And that was in the trailer we just saw. She said, "You could never go back to Manderley, but sometimes I do in my dreams." And that's how the movie opens, and then you go to Manderley. It's a beautiful film. Wonderfully acted, and as we were talking about ensemble, great many people were in that movie. I will mention a few others as we go on because I have someone in another clip. But one of the most famous was there was the maid, the woman who took care of the household, and her name was Mrs. Danvers was the character. And we have a picture of Mrs. Danvers, who was played by Dame Judith Anderson. And for those of you, she was a great actor. She was renowned for her performance as Lady Macbeth, has won Emmys, was nominated for many Oscars, and at the age of 87, she was in, for you Star Trek fans out there, she played the High Priestess at the very end of Star Trek: The Search for Spock. And in this picture, she was 87 years old. And I didn't realize who she was at the time. I was watching the movie with my mom and watching Spock. And at the end, when they brought her out, when she's in a chair, if you remember the Search for Spock, they bring the High Priestess out, and she's the one that determines about Spock, not to give away anything. And my mom said, "That's a very old actress." And when she said it, she didn't mean by age. She meant an actress who had done classic films. And I looked her up, and it was like, it's Mrs. Danvers, or Danny, as she was called in the movie. And I have a few other things I wrote down about that movie. One thing about Rebecca is, one, as I said, it won Best Picture. Alfred Hitchcock did not win Best Director, and I dislike that when Hollywood does that, where if the picture wins, then the director should win as well, shouldn't he? Shouldn't it? So this won Best Picture in 1940, but Best Director went to John Ford, who already had 5 of them. John Ford is the director with the most Academy Awards. Just if you're playing some stupid trivia game and maybe you're going to win a little money, you remember John Ford, 5 Academy Awards for Best Director, and that year he won for The Grapes of Wrath, which was another great classic movie. So I guess in a way I could say I'm happy Rebecca won, and The Grapes of Wrath didn't win, because even though Alfred Hitchcock's movies have sustained, they have a long shelf life. They're still around, most of them, and even the real oldies are the English version. I have a collection, and you could still you go to some stores where they sell DVDs, and you'll see Alfred Hitchcock collections of many movies that are still timeless. Alfred Hitchcock films are still great. I'm trying to look. I have a few other things. What I want to say is all of the films I'm talking about tonight, I'm going to show a clip of another. They were all adapted from novels, which the novels are all still very popular to this day. And I read them all. Go figure. All these, it just was a coincidence. I just hit the mic there. It was a coincidence that I read the books for all these movies. I read Rebecca after I saw Rebecca, and it, sometimes they say the book is better than the movie. Sometimes they are just as good, and the book is just as good. But Rebecca, the film, you should see it. It's in black and white, but it also won. It was nominated for 11 Academy Awards. It just won 2. Best Picture, as I said, and it won for Best Cinematography. So you should see Rebecca. It's a great film, and you should own it. Now, here are 3 forgotten classics of more the science fiction horror genre. 3 forgotten classics, and then we'll talk about them.
That's unfortunately what happened to some asparagus. It's quite evident, isn't it, that I mean you no harm?
His is the hand that makes.
Do you know what it means to feel like God?
The house of pain.
They're cutting a living man to pieces.
Are we not men?
We switch you to the state capitol, where His Excellency, the Governor, is speaking from the Executive Mansion.
Further, I have, in conjunction with the federal government, declared this state to be a disaster area.
I was sent to keep you here until they come.
To kill me.
Vampires, alive among the lifeless, that make the night hideous with their inhuman cravings. If they are not destroyed in the flaming pits of hellfire, or staked to the ground in the light of the sun, will the unbelievable become real? A world of inanimate zombies by day, irresistible, horrifying attackers by night. Can a zombie woman's hunger for love repopulate the earth?
Picture could change, and I could be always what I am now. For that, I would give everything. There's nothing in the whole world I would not give. I would give my soul for that.
The vain jealousy which prompted Dorian Gray to utter this fateful prayer was destined to sweep him into a life so fraught with vice and evil that its marks became horrible to behold. For the mad wish of Dorian Gray was granted through some supernatural miracle. And day by day he watched his sins etch themselves upon his painted portrait, while he himself stayed young and handsome. Every vile thought and act, every criminal deed, left its mark upon the painted canvas that was to bear the burden of his shame. Down to depths of degradation frightful to conceive went Dorian Gray, seeking new outlets to satisfy his passion for pleasure. His extraordinary visits into the strange world of crime and sin became notorious. And when he reappeared again in society, men would whisper to each other in corners or look at him with searching eyes. Women, who for his sake had set convention at defiance, were seen to grow pale if Dorian Gray entered the room. What was this strange fascination this man held for everybody? To what limits of evil did he drag those he knew? Men and women alike, all fell under the spell of his charm, and yet to know him was to court shame and disaster.
Now, those are 3 movies you should run out and see. They will satisfy you, won't be disappointed. The first one is Island of the Lost Souls with Charles Laughton. And it was adapted from H.G. Wells' classic novel, The Island of Dr. Moreau. There have been 3 film adaptations of this novel. None of them are as good as this one. Charles Laughton, here's a picture here, received an Academy Award in 1933 for The Private Life of Henry VIII. I love Charles Laughton. I will see every movie with him. He was one of those actors who Charles Laughton could play a leading man, or he could be a supporting character. He's in Spartacus. He's in so many movies. I can't even mention all of them. And I loved him as an actor. He was a couple of years into acting on the stage. He fell in love with a woman and married her, Elsa Lanchester. And here's a picture of the 2 of them. And they did much acting on stage and screen together. There's Charles Laughton and Elsa Lanchester. Some of you may remember Elsa Lanchester from a horror film. So we have a picture that's going to come up of Elsa in a horror film. As that's the picture. You may remember her as the Bride of Frankenstein. So a little trivia, who married the Bride of Frankenstein? Charles Laughton. A great movie. As a matter of fact, I consider The Island of the Lost Souls a much better film than The Island of Dr. Moreau as a book. The film is much better than the book. And that's the movie I would see. Now we have a picture from the picture of Dorian Gray. This is Herb Hatfield, who played Dorian Gray, and Angela Lansbury from Murder, She Wrote. And she's in the movie, and Donna Reed is in the movie, for those of you who may remember her, and George Sanders. This is a picture of Herb Hatfield and Angela Lansbury, and what I learned is that they became great friends upon meeting at this movie, and actually Herb Hatfield was in 3 episodes of Murder, She Wrote. They became very close, and they even owned property near each other in Ireland. The other movie that we saw was The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price. And who doesn't love him? Here's a man that, as creepy as he was, you loved him. He could do comedy. He could play different roles. He was great. This, The Last Man on Earth, is adapted from the book I Am Legend. Remember that? Remember that Will Smith atrocity? Well, there were 3 movies adapted from I Am Legend. And the first one was The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price. He was in and it was a low-budget film, and it was made in Italy, so the other people are dubbed, and Vincent Price is the only person who spoke English. But so it's a spaghetti horror film. It's the best. It's the closest adaptation to I Am Legend, but I recommend you read the book. It's great. If you like vampires, it's about vampires. And we have one more picture of George Sanders. George Sanders was in the picture of Dorian Gray, and he was also in Rebecca, but I don't believe he was in the trailer. And George Sanders was a wonderful man. I loved him as an actor. He was great at playing a cad. played a cad very well. And sadly, as he got older, he suffered from dementia, and his health worsened. So George Sanders committed suicide, and he took 3 bottles of barbiturates, and he left several suicide notes, and one of them that is still I find amazing is he wrote, "Dear world, I am leaving because I am bored. I feel I have lived long enough. I am leaving you with your worries in this sweet cesspool. Good luck." And if you ever see any movies with George Sanders, you will say this was very fitting. It was as though one of the characters, like the character from either The Picture of Dorian Gray or Rebecca, they were almost the same character. You would think that they wrote that suicide note, that it was staged, but it wasn't. Anyway, I had a lot of fun today talking about classic films, having movie review with Ryan speaking about Action Point, and Willy Wonka's coming into a new movie. I want to leave you all with friends of mine have been asking me to go back and do stand-up. Why don't you do stand-up? So for those of you who want me to do stand-up, I'm going to leave you and end the show with a bit of mine, which is a bit that seems to be the one everybody loves the most, the directions bit. Okay, my Italian map, as I call it. The Italian map bit. Have a great week, everybody. This has been Benny TV. Stay tuned. Laughter Saves Lives Live is up next. Have a good night. I have a lousy sense of direction. I really do to this day. Horrible sense of direction. And I still remember I need a GPS. I don't have one yet. I need it. I remember the first time I ever drove to Brooklyn, and I wasn't sure how to get back. I said to my uncle, "How do I get home from here?" He said, "No problem, baby. I'm going to make you a map." Right? A map to an Italian is everything on the kitchen table. This napkin holder is your car. This sauce taking out the other end. This sauce taking is the exit to the Belt Parkway. Don't forget you want to take the Belt Parkway. You don't want to get aboard the Belt Parkway. Now my other uncle's sitting at the table and chiming in. It's one of those white cloth tablecloths, and they got the butter knives, and they're making marks. Benny, don't forget you got to turn right, you got to turn left. This is over here. You got to go to the Belt Parkway. Don't forget the Belt Parkway. I'm so confused. They got cannolis out. I'm so freaking. I start getting this vision of I'm going to get lost. I'm going to pull over to a police officer and I'm going to say, "Excuse me, sir, I missed the fork." There's no fork around here. No, the salad fork. Where's the freaking salad fork? I just still to know. So my uncle sensed this. They sense my confusion. They come out with this brilliant idea. We're going to get into one car, Benny. But before that, my uncle, to make matters worse, one of my uncles says, "Benny, here's your baby cousin Josephine. Picks her up in her diapers, puts her on the end of the table and says, this is a Verrazano here. If you go that way, you ain't going to Long Island. Holy crap, who change the diaper around here? Kid smells like Staten Island. Running over babies in the street, so my uncle sensed my confusion. They said, "We're going to get into one car. We lead you to the exit." So 6 of my uncles crammed into an IROC Z. And they said, "We're going to take you and we're going to beep and wave when we get to the exit." Beep and wave. So they take me, they beep and wave, I beep and wave, and go over the Verrazano. Italians have a great sense of direction. Christopher Columbus discovered America. He was looking for India. His navigator was one of my ancestors.